Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks, but I'm happy that you have decided to log on to this video. So we are going to start our 5-week hip sequence, and we're going to start with just a general hip sequence today, and then we'll move and progress from there. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. Today's class is going to start on our back. So go ahead, get on your back, and make sure that your block is within arm's reach once you get down to your back. All right, so get settled here on your back. Go ahead and spread out. Let your feet fall open, let your arms fall open. Make sure there's a little length in the back of your neck. You're not crunching your neck. And then go ahead, close your eyes and settle in here. Taking a couple big, full, deep breaths. Here, continue to lengthen your breath. Just begin to settle that body. If it's been a little while since you come onto your mat, then let's take some extra time to just shut everything down and become aware of what's happening internally. As you continue to lengthen your breath, let's go ahead and scan through the entire body, beginning at the crown of the head and working your way all the way down, making sure that as you stop along the way, you're paying attention to your front plane, your back plane, and your side. So making sure that we are observing all parts of our body from all different angles, just to see how we feel as we come back onto our mat. Taking your time to get there, once you complete your full body scan, we'll go ahead and grab for your block and just place that block on your belly, leaving the rest of the body right where it was. Go ahead and begin to find breath into that belly, pushing that block up with the inhale and letting it release down with the exhale. Continue to breathe here, trying to move that block. If it helps to open your eyes and gaze down at the block to see how much the block is moving, that's a great way to do this practice. Also, just that physical sensation on your belly may draw your attention down there enough to send the breath down there. Whatever you need to do, our focus and goal here is to bring breath deep into the belly. Go ahead and take 3 more cycles of breath here. At the end of your third exhale, go ahead and remove that block from our belly, making sure that you're connected with your breath here, maybe that Ujjayi breath. And if you feel like you are, then go ahead and draw those knees into the chest. Let's begin some movement here, gently rocking from side to side, maintaining that long, smooth breath. All right, from here, we're going to go ahead and cross our knees. Doesn't matter which one goes on top, because we'll switch. As you try and stack the knees one on top of another, let's go ahead and try and zip those thighs together. And once you get there, you can hold on to the knees, you can hold on to the shins, or you can hold on to the ankles, which would be the most extended variation of this pose. And as you hold on to whatever body part we're thinking about either pulling or drawing energetically, the heels towards the opposite hips. As you do so, make sure that everything in the upper body remains relaxed, remains in alignment, nice and symmetrical. And we find long, smooth breaths into the outer hip of that top leg. If you look down at your legs, this pose may look familiar to you. This pose is usually done in a seated position where we try and stack our knees one on top of another. And then often we'll go ahead and stretch the shoulders along with what's happening in the lower body. So here's where we would use a strap to try and wiggle one hand up the back and the other hand tries to find that connection with the first hand. But here we're using the foundation and the support of our back just to get into the hips. That's our primary focus today, is to work on whatever is going on in the hips. I think that the sequence is coming at a good time after we've had some time away, and you guys may have been repeating some videos. I know that one of the areas, for me at least, that becomes very problematic after not practicing yoga regularly is my hips. And that often translates into, some lower back pain, some achy legs, tired, fatigued muscles. We'll take one more big, deep breath here into that outer hip. Good, and then let's gently release. Go ahead and find a little bit of movement here, maybe knees back to the chest, rocking side to side, whatever feels best to you. And now let's try that second side. So we'll cross the other leg on top, trying to stack the knees, and then finding somewhere to hold on to. Whatever's best for you as you slightly draw those legs towards the body. Again, sending the breath into the outer hip of whichever leg is on top. Good. We'll take 2 more cycles of breath here, sending the breath into our hip. And at the end of your second exhale, gently release. And once again, find movement here that feels good to you. All right. Wherever you're at, draw the knees into the chest, holding them tightly here. Then we'll go ahead and have both hands hold on to the right leg, extend the left leg long, make sure that the heel presses into the mat, the back of the leg presses into the mat, and the toes are flexed. This will help keep our hips in good alignment as we come into half happy baby. So again, maybe place that left hand onto the hip flexor, and then we'll take our right hand, we'll grab for our shin, our ankle, or the outside of our foot. We'll go ahead and draw that foot down, trying to keep the left hip anchored, trying to keep the upper body relaxed. This can be stagnant or you can find some movement. We're just gently beginning to creep our way into those hips using our breath and our asanas, our poses. Good. Find one more deep breath here. And gently release the hand, giving the knee one last hug, and then swap. Go ahead and grab for the left leg, extend the right leg long, same thing. Right heel, right back of the leg, right toes, pointed up. Pressing actively through that right leg, then we'll grab for some part of the left leg or left foot. Maybe placing that right hand on the right hip flexor here. Moving nice and slowly as we begin to find our way into the hips. Being patient, taking our time, using that breath as a tool to help us relax the body, relax those muscles. Lots of firing going on here. Telling your body to protect, telling your body to pause, to stop, to back off. Once again, coming back in tune with what's happening, learning those signals individually for yourself. What do they mean? How loud should those voices be? Can you persist through? Can you use the breath to help you get deeper into the pose? Good. Take one more nice slow breath. You're just enjoying this slow opening in our hips. When you're ready, let's gently release, hugging both knees in now. A gentle sway from side to side. Now a gentle sway up and down the spine. When you're ready, we'll go ahead and shift our way into a seated position, and then just using it as a transition, we'll go ahead and turn around into tabletop pose. All right, once you get into tabletop pose, stack those wrists under the shoulders, stack the knees under the hips, making sure that the knees are no wider than hip distance apart. And once you get into that position, go ahead and take a nice big inhale. And with your exhale, round that back, drop the tailbone towards the heels and the chin to the chest. On your inhale, lift the tailbone, drop the belly down, and bring that head up. Good. Exhale, rounding through cat. Inhale, lifting in cow. Now moving with your breath, slowly beginning to warm up that spine. Slowly beginning to build a little heat in the body. And most importantly, we slowly link all that work we did with our breath. Now we link it into our movements. Taking your time, let's find 3 more cycles of cat and cow. So 3 more cats, 3 more cows. Good. After that 3rd time through, we'll all meet in a neutral tabletop. And then let's go ahead and find some hip rotation. So going either way doesn't matter. We'll reverse it in a moment. But moving nice and slowly, finding big or small circles with our hips. All right, let's go the other way. And go ahead and find some stillness here. Now we're gently going to drop our hips down to the side one by one. So you're just going to go ahead and as you drop to the side, you let that opposite leg kind of follow with. And once you find that sweet spot, that good stretch in the outside of the hip that you're leaning towards, go ahead and settle there for 3 cycles of breath. Good. At the end of that 3rd cycle, come back through A neutral spine. Take one cat and one cow just to realign. And then go ahead and drop the second hip down. Just settling once you feel that good stretch. Last deep breath. Good. Go ahead and separate the knees. Bring the big toes together. Sink the hips back. Taking a couple rounds of breath in child's pose. Go ahead and take 2 more cycles of breath. At the end of your second cycle, slowly begin to shift the weight into your hands. Tuck your toes underneath. Send the hips up high. Finding your way into downward dog. Walk your dog, sway your hips. When you're ready, go ahead and bend your knees. Look at the space between your hands and go ahead, travel up to the top of your mat. We'll meet in standing forward fold. To make sure that everything is melting off, so go ahead and grab for opposite elbows. Keep a micro bend in the knees. Let the head hang between the hands. And maybe sway from side to side. When you're ready, release the hands, place the hands onto the shins, and take an inhale to lift halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale to lift halfway. Exhale to fold. Inhaling, lift halfway. Exhale, fold. This time, root through the feet. Inhale, lift all the way, reaching the arms out to the side. Letting them meet, the hands meet at the top. And then exhale, hands down in front of your hearts. Good. Let's reposition ourselves to the top of our mats. Once we get there, we'll move nice and slowly through these sun salutations. So standing tall at the top of your mat, hands resting at your side. When you're ready, inhale, draw the arms out and up. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, lift halfway, nice flat back, heart reaching forward. Exhale, fold, plant the hands, send the feet back through plank. Maintaining a strong plank here as you lower through chaturanga. Inhale, lift in cobra. Exhale, tuck the toes, send the hips up high. 2 deep breaths and down dog. At the end of your second exhale, go ahead, bend your knees, travel to the top of your mat. Inhale, lift halfway when you get there. And exhale, fold. Inhale, rise, arms reaching out and up. Hands meeting at the top. Exhale, hands down in front of your hearts. Good. Moving one more time together. Inhale, arms draw out and up. Exhale, folding forward. Inhale, lift halfway. And exhale, fold. Plant the hands, send the feet back through plank. Before we come to chaturanga, the shoulders come in front of the wrists and we slowly lower. Inhale, lift in cobra, open that front body. Exhale, tuck the toes, reset, 2 deep breaths and down dog. At the end of that second exhale, go ahead, bend the knees, come on up to the top of your mat. Inhale, lift halfway, let the breath guide you. Exhale, fold. And inhale, rise, arms sweeping out and up. Exhale, hands down in front of your hearts. Moving one more time on your own, let your breath guide you, or just stay at the top of your mat to feel your breath. Good. At the end of that sun salutation, we're going to go ahead and find our way back down onto a tabletop kind of position. Once you get into tabletop, separate your knees. We're going to come back to where we started before we started warming up the body. We're going to come back to child's pose. So here, you can take a similar child's pose as you did at the end of our warm-up, or you can find a different variation, maybe bringing the knees a little closer, maybe setting the hands between the legs, or like I said, maybe just coming right back into that traditional child's pose. Let's use child's pose to reset and regain the breath. Good, so taking long, smooth, deep breaths here in child's pose. We're going to move into our peak poses for this general hip sequence. And before we do so, let's talk a little bit about the hips. So there are over 20 muscles that cross the hip, a collection of inner thigh muscles, adductors, and the collection of outer thigh muscles, which are the abductors. Hip flexors in the front, deep lateral rotators in the back, and more. Our hips provide balance, stability, and range of motion for our daily activities. When our hips are tight, it causes poor balance, low back pain, postural problems, increasing the load and overuse of the spine, misalignments in that lumbar spine, and perhaps trouble standing or walking for long periods. There are many benefits to opening up our hip muscles. Some of them include improved range of motion and circulation, along with decreased back pain. Your hamstrings are part of your hip muscles. They attach to the back of your pelvis and run down the back of your leg. Their job is to extend your hip and flex your knee. And we'll address those hamstrings a little bit more in a future class. But remembering that those hamstrings are part of this muscle group, so whenever we come to that standing forward fold, or later when we come into our inversion, that wide forward fold, we're continuing to work on the hip muscles. Go ahead and take one more big deep breath here. Feel that breath in the back body. Slow, steady exhale through the nose. Good. And then slowly, let's begin to work our way back up, bringing the weight into our hands, and let's return back to tabletop. All right, get a good tabletop here. Make sure that the alignment looks good. And we will be on our knee for 2 of these poses. So if you want to send a blanket underneath your feet or double your mat up so that your knees aren't directly what feels like on the floor, and go ahead and grab those props. And if you're ready to move forward, we're going to come into a low lunge. So let's go ahead and shift the weight into the left knee, and we'll bring that right leg forward as far forward as we can in between our hands ideally. And once you get there, you can stay here if it feels good, just to slowly lunge forward. The targeted muscle group right now is the left hip flexor, so the front of the left hip. If it feels good to stay here, to stay low, to try and square off the hips, which means that you're not letting the right hip travel too far. So this right hip isn't coming too far forward in this position, but we can try and square off the hips, which will give us a deeper hip opening. Again, staying low if that feels good. Or you can slowly begin to come up so that the knee is stacked over the heel. Here our hands can rest on that side. And we can stay just in this upright position if that's enough of a stretch for us, which it may be. Or we can begin to lunge forward, low lunge here. See if you can lengthen and engage that back leg. Make sure that you're releasing any tension in the upper body, including in the neck. Sending that breath into that place where you feel the resistance, that physical sensation. And stay with it. As the body feels that sensation, it may say, hey, I don't like this isn't comfortable. But remember, the only way that we're going to transform and make progress is by working through some of that discomfort. Good, we'll take one more cycle of breath here. Left hip flexor being the focus. And then slowly bring the hands down, once again framing that front right leg. And then we're going to go ahead, heel toe that right foot towards the left side of the mat, and then bring the outside of that shin down. We should be in a pretty close to a pigeon pose here. But let's straighten out our alignment. So once you get that right leg down, go ahead, look over your right shoulder, and make sure that the left leg is straight all the way through the tips of the toes. Good. And now remember that when we have tight hips, we're going to want to have a pretty sharp angle in this front right leg. If our hips are more open, we're going to work towards squaring off the front right shin with the front of the mat, so bringing them parallel. And additionally, if we have open hips, we'll try and get this foot closer to the midline. So my right foot right now is really close to the left side of my body because my hips are tight. If my hips were more open, I would try and bring the foot into the midline of my body. And once you've prepared your body for pigeon pose, we'll go ahead and settle in here, taking 10 cycles of breath, focusing on keeping the hips nice and square, and then feeling what you feel in your body, in your hips. The targeted area here is the outer right hip. However, if you have tight hip flexors, you're going to feel a pretty deep sensation in the front of the left hip. So go ahead and settle your way down, and we'll begin those 10 cycles of breath. With pigeon pose, remember that there's always little refining movements that we need to tune into to keep this pose active. So we're not settling here. We're not getting sleepy. We're using this pose to work our way into our hips. Continue those little movements. Taking one more cycle of breath here in pigeon pose. You go ahead and work your way up to your hands. From there, let's gently move, sending the right foot back to meet the left. Finding movement here. Good. Once you feel like you've worked out what's going on in that right leg, then go ahead and anchor that right knee down. We'll go ahead and bring our left foot forward this time. And again, maybe just lunging here. Maybe it feels good to stay in this pose for you and just focus on sending the breath into that right hip flexor, the front of the right hip. If you'd like to transition up, we'll bring both hands onto that left side. Again, continuing to just focus on what's happening in that right hip flexor. One more cycle of breath here. Bring the hands down to frame that left foot. Heel toe that left foot over towards the right side of the mat. Settling it down, looking over now the left shoulder to make sure the right leg is nice and straight. Continue to make your little movements here. One cue that helps bring the hips square, because I know that when I say square your hips off, it's a little bit of a ambiguous cue. Try and roll your back leg inward so that the leg is in a really neutral position. This will help to square your hip bones towards the front of the mat as you roll that hip bone forward. And then try and draw your outer hip back towards the midline of your body. So try that little movement there. Rolling the back leg inward so the leg is in a neutral position, squaring your hip bones towards the front of the mat. And as you roll that right leg, that right hip bone forward, try and draw the outer left hip back towards where the midline of your body is. Settle here for 10 cycles of breath. Taking one more cycle of breath here. Slowly moving our way onto our hands. Once you get there, sending that left leg back to meet right, finding movement into those legs and into our hips. Good. Once you feel comfortable, the legs feel as good as they're going to get. We'll go ahead and press our hands into the mat, separate the fingers, tuck the toes under, send the hips up high, downward dog. From downward dog, go ahead, lift one of the feet, it doesn't matter which one. Send that foot towards the top of the mat, and then we're going to pivot around so that we can parallel the feet, coming into wide forward fold. So settle here in wide forward fold here. We're opening up the hips. We're bringing strength and stretching into the hamstrings. We're opening up those inner thighs, settling the upper body, finding whatever feels good for our hands and our head. And we'll stay here for 10 more cycles of breath. At the end of that 10th cycle of breath, go ahead and pivot your way back around to face the front of your mat. And then we'll find our way down onto our seat. And we'll bring the soles of our feet together once we get into that seated position. Coming into bound angle pose. So again, feet away from you. If you need some time for the hips feel good. After this sequence, we'll go ahead and bring those feet a little bit closer to us. And then we'll bring our hands down onto our ankles, using the outsides of our arms and our elbows to encourage the knees down as we take an inhale to lengthen the spine, making sure the back is nice and flat, and then an exhale to fold forward. You're going to take one more cycle of breath here. And then slowly work your way up. From here, let's go ahead and come down onto your back. And here's what we'll grab for that strap or t-shirt or whatever you have to use. We'll extend the left leg straight. We'll go ahead and bend through the right knee. We'll hook that strap onto the bottom of that right foot. Right around the ball of the foot would be best. And then we'll extend the right leg straight. Now as you hold onto the strap, you're already going to create some tension in the shoulders. Make sure that the shoulder blades stay plugged into the mat and there's a little bit of length in the back of your neck. And as you do so, continue to try and draw that right leg towards the body. As you do so, you'll feel a good stretch through the back of that right leg. Just like we did in Half Happy Baby at the beginning of class, the left leg should stay active, so we should be pressing through the back of the left leg into the mat, and the left toe should be pointed up towards the ceiling. Good. Take one more cycle of breath and gently release. When you're ready, send the left knee up towards the upper body. Hook the strap onto the ball of that left foot. Then extend that left foot up, making sure that the right leg is active and slowly drawing that left leg towards the body with a relaxed upper body. Long, smooth breath. Last cycle of breath. And gently release. Go ahead and bring the strap over to the side. And now, before we come into our final pose, one last cool down pose, bringing the soles of the feet together, opening up the knees, making sure that the sacrum remains either in contact or close contact with the floor. If not, then send the feet further away from the body, placing our hands on our belly, closing our eyes. And just like in the beginning of class now, instead of moving the block, we're trying to move our hands. Inhaling, lifting those hands as the belly fills. And exhale, feeling the hands lower down as we empty out. If it feels good, you're welcome to stay here. If you'd like to move into full Savasana, go ahead, use the hands to encourage the knees back towards one another. Go ahead and extend the legs one at a time on your mat. Let the feet fall open, let the hands rest at your side. Taking one or two more full intentional deep breaths, and then go ahead and settle into your full Savasana, allowing the body to relax and restore from our practice. And doing our best to keep our mind present, to focus on the breath, and to allow any wandering thoughts to come into our mind, but then also pass right through. slowly begin to wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Find movement into your wrists and your ankles. Gently nod your head from side to side. And when you're ready, bend your knees and gently roll onto the right side of your body where you'll pause in the fetal position. From here, push yourself up to a comfortable seated position on your mat, and we'll meet with our hands together in front of our hearts. Thank you so much for coming back, for tuning back in, to working through class, to coming back onto your mat. Next week, we will continue our hip sequence and we will work on strength and balance. But for today, it's with gratitude that I close this practice by saying, Namaste. Thank you, yogis. I hope everybody's doing well.